It's Chapter 3 An Unpleasant Meeting. What are your plans for this morning, Nancy? Her father asked at the breakfast table. I thought I'd do a little shopping, she replied. Her eyes twinkled. There's a dance coming up at the country club, and I would like to get a new dress. Then, will you phone me about lunch? Or better still, how about eating with me, whether Mr. Ralsted comes or not? I'll be there, Nancy declared gaily. All right, drop in at my office about 12:30. If Mr. Rolsted doesn't accept my invitation, we'll try to find out something about Joysa Crowley's wills. Mr. Drew pushed back his chair. I must hurry now, or I'll be late getting downtown. After her father had left, Nancy finished her breakfast, then went to the kitchen to help Hannah Grun, who has already left the table. Any errands for me? Nancy asked. Yes, dear, here's a list, the housekeeper replied, and good luck with your detective work. Hannah Grun gazed at the girl affectionately, and several thoughts raced through her mind. In school, Nancy has been very popular and made many friends, but through no fault of her own, she had made two enemies, Ada and Isabella Tomham. This worried Hannah. The sisters' intensely jealousy of Nancy has tried to discredit her in positions she had held in school. But loyal friends had always sprung to Nancy's defense. As a result, Ada and Isabella had become more unpleasant than ever to Nancy. Thanks for your encouragement, she said to Hannah a little later, giving her a hug. Whatever you do, Nancy, beware of those Dauphin sisters. They would be only too happy to make things difficult for you. I promise to be on my guard. Before leaving the house, Nancy phoned the Turners. She was glad to hear that Judy had suffered no ill effects from her fall, but she was disappointed that the police had found no clues to the thieves who had stolen the silverware. Please let me know if you learn anything, Nancy said, and Edna promised to do so. Becomingly dressed in a tan cotton suit, Nancy set off in a convertible for the shopping district. She drove down the Bluebelt and, upon reaching the most congested streets, made her way skillfully through her heavy traffic, then pulled into a parking lot. I think I'll try to Taylor's department store first for a dress, she decided. Taylor was one of the River Heights' finest stores. Nancy purchased several items for Hannah on the main floor, then went directly to the Mrs. Wearing apparel section on the second floor. Usually, Nancy had no trouble finding a sales clerk, but this particular morning seemed to be an especially busy one in the department, and an extra rush of customers has temporarily overwhelmed the sales floor. Nancy sat down in a convenient chair to await her turn. Her thoughts wandered to the Turner sisters and little Judy. Would she be able to help them? She was suddenly brought out of the reverie by loud-voiced complaints. We have been standing here nearly 10 minutes, a thrilled voice declared. Send a salesman to us immediately. Nancy turned to see Ada and Isabella Topham speaking to the floor manager. I'm afraid I can't, the man replied regretfully. There are a number of others ahead of you. Perhaps you don't know who we are. Ada interrupted rudely. Indeed I do, the floor manager told her wearily. I will have a saleswoman here in a few moments, if you will only wait. We are not accustomed to waiting, Isabella Topham told him easily. Such service? Ada chimed in. Do you realize that my father owns considerable stocks in Taylor's? If you referred your conduct to him, he could have you discharged. I'm sorry, the harassed man apologized, but it is a rule of the store. You must await your turn. Ada tossed her head and her eyes flashed angrily. This did nothing to improve her looks. In spite of the expensive clothes she wore, Ada was not attractive. She was very thin and sallow, with an expression of petulance. Now that her face was distorted with anger, she was almost ugly. Isabella, the pride of the Topham family, was rather pretty, but her face lacked character. She had acquired an artificial, elegant manner of speaking which, although irritating, was sometimes amusing. It was her mother's ambition that Isabella marry into a socially prominent family. I pity any future husbands of hers, Nancy thought with a chuckle. Suddenly, Ada and Isabella saw Nancy, who nodded a greeting. Isabella coldly returned the nod, but Ada gave an indication that she had even noticed Nancy. At the moment, a salesman hurried towards the Topham sisters. At once, they began to shower abuse upon the young woman for her failure to wait on them sooner. What is it you wish to look at, Miss Topham? The clerk said flushingly. Evening dresses. The salesman brought out several dresses. Nancy watched curiously as the Toffins, in an unpleasant frame of mind, tossed aside beautiful models with scarcely a second glance. They found fault in every garment. This is a very chic gown, the saleswoman told them hopefully, as she displayed a particularly attractive dress of lace and chiffon. It arrived only this morning. Ada picked it up, gave the dress one careless glance, then tossed it into a chair as the distracted clerk went off to bring other frocks. The fluffy gown slipped to the floor in a crumpled mass. To Nancy's horror, Ada stepped on it as she turned to examine another dress. In disgust, Nancy went to pick it up. Leave that alone, Ada cried out, her eyes blazing. Nobody asked for your help. Are you buying this? Nancy asked evenly. It's none of your business. As Nancy continued to hold the dress, Ada, in a rage, snatched in a front. As Nancy continued to hold the dress, Ada, in a rage, snatched in front her hands. As Nancy continued to hold the dress, Ada, in a rage, snatched in from her hands, causing a long tear in the chiffon skirt. Oh, Isabella cried out. Now we are done it. We had better get out of here, Ada. And why? Her naughty sister shrilled. It was Nancy's too's fault. She always making trouble. It was not my fault, Nancy said. Come on, Ada, Isabella urged before that clerk get back. Reluctantly, Ada followed Isabella out of the department. As they rushed towards a waiting elevator, Nancy gasped after them. At this moment, the saleswoman reappeared with an armful of lovely frocks. She stared in the bewilderment of the torn dress. Where did my customers go? She asked Nancy worriedly. Nancy pointed towards the elevator but made no comment. Instead, she said, I'm looking for an evening dress myself. This torn one is very pretty. Do you think it could be mended? Oh, I don't know, the wobbligant clerk wailed. I'll probably be responsible, and I can't afford to pay for the dress. I'm sure Taylor wouldn't ask you to do that, Nancy said kindly. If there are any trouble, I'll speak to the manager myself. What usually happens if that such a dress is greatly reduced? Thank you, the clerk replied. I'll call Miss Reed, the fitter, and see what can be done. First, let me try on the dress, Nancy said smilingly. They found a vacant fitting room, and Nancy took off her suit and blouse. Then she slipped the lovely pale blue dance creation over her head, and the saleswoman zipped it up. It's darling on you, she said enthusiastically. Nancy grinned. I kind of like myself in it, she said. Please call the fitter now. Presently, Miss Reed, a grey-haired woman, appeared. Within seconds, she had made a change in an overlap of the chiffon skirt. The tear was no longer visible, and the style of the dress was actually improved. I told our manager what happened, said the saleswoman. If you want the dress, he will reduce the price 50%. How wonderful, Nancy exclaimed. Laughingly, she said, the price will fit into my budget nicely. I'll take the dress. Please send it. She gave her name and address. To herself, she added, Ada Toffen did me a favor, but if she never finds out what happened, she'll certainly be burnt up. Nancy suppressed a giggle. It's been a real pleasure waiting on you, Miss True, the saleswoman said after Miss Reed left and Nancy was putting on a suit. But how I'd read to see those Taffam sisters come in here. They are so unresponsible, and they'll be even worse when they get Joyce Crowell's money. The women lowered a voice. The estate hasn't been settled, but the girls are counting on the fortune already. Last week, I heard Ada say to her sister, Oh, I guess there's no question about our getting old Crowley fortune, but I wish father would stop worrying that somebody is going to show up with a later will which may do us out of it. Nancy was too discreet to engage in gossip with the saleswoman, but she was interested and excited about the information. The fact that Mr. Toffen was disrupted indicated to her that he too suggested Josiah Crowley had made a second will. The conversation reminded Nancy of her date. She glanced at her wristwatch and saw that it was after 12 o'clock. I must hurry or I'll be late for an appointment with my dad, she said to the saleswoman. Nancy drove directly to her father's office. Although she was a few minutes ahead of the appointment time, she found that he was ready to leave. What luck, Dad? Nancy asked eagerly. Did Mr. Rolsett accepted your luncheon invitation? Yes, we are to meet him at the Royal Hotel in 10 minutes. Do you still think I should quiz him about the Crawley bill? Oh, I'm more interested than even in the case, she told her father about the saleswoman gossip's remarks. Him, said Mr. Drew. It's not what you would call evidence, but the old saying usually holds good. Wherever there's smoke, there is fire. Come, let's go. The Royal Hotel was located less than a block away, and Nancy and her father quickly walked the distance. Mr. Rolstead was waiting in the lobby. Carlson Drew introduced his daughter, then the three made their way to the dining room where a table has been reserved for them. At first, the conversation centered about a variety of subjects. As the luncheon processed, the two lawyers talked enthusiastically of the college days together and finally of their profession. Nancy began to fear of the subject of the Crowley's estate might never be brought up. Then, after the dessert course, Mr. Drew skillfully turned the conversation into a new channel and mentioned some strange cases which he has handled. By the way, he said, I haven't heard the details of the Crawley case. How are the Toffins making out? I understand other relatives are trying to break the will. For a moment, Mr. Rolstead remained silent. Was he reluctant to enter into discussion of the matter? Nancy wondered. Finally, the lawyer said quietly, the settlement of the estate wasn't given to me, Carlson, but I confess I would follow it rather closely because of something that happened a year ago. As the present will stands, I do not believe it can be broken. When the dolphins fall their hire to the entire state, Mr. Drew commented. Yes, unless a more recent will be uncovered. Another will? Carlson Drew inquired innocently. Then you believe Crawley made a second one? Mr. Rolstead hesitated, as though uncertain whether or not he should divulge any further information. Then, with a quick glance about, he lowered his voice and said, Of course, this is strictly confidential. So, was the chapter interesting, guys?